Welcome back for part 2 of the Stories of New Atlantis. The tower is named for MAST, the Military, Administrative, and Scientific Triumvirate, the governing body of the United Colonies. The structure of the tower looms over the city, anchored by 4 large feet, with a lobby at the center standing over a NAT station. The tower stands over and is surrounded by a large decorative lake on the west, north, and east sides, while the southern exposure hangs over the cliff that divides the upper city from the lower. The captain walked past the ramp down to the NAT station and witnessed a group of pilots being sworn into the UC Vanguard. From here, the captain climbed the stairs to the lobby where they found a security officer sitting at an information desk. She explained her job, making sure that people got to their appointments on time, and told the captain that while the staff of the tower were all highly qualified and trained prior to working at MAST, Captain John Tuala at the Vanguard desk might have work for them. The captain saw this desk to the left with a sign above it that read, Vanguard. The captain was generally aware of the Vanguard, a volunteer branch of the United Colonies Navy. It had been created in response to the armada of civilian ships raised by the Freestar Collective in the Battle of Cheyenne 19 years prior. Along with space combat patrol duty, the Vanguard provides humanitarian aid and auxiliary support operations to the UC Navy. The captain introduced himself to Captain John Tuala and listened to his spiel about the benefits of working for the Vanguard, including the ability to work towards citizenship in the UC. Unlike the managed democracies of old, in the UC, service guarantees citizenship, and thus only those who serve their government and fellow people can rise to the distinction of citizen. Interested in the opportunities that could arise from such a position, the captain agreed to try out for the UC Vanguard, but not just today. Instead of heading down to the UC Vanguard Orientation Hall, a museum of displays of selectively edited history of the settled systems that dead ends in a flight simulator, the captain headed upstairs. Rather than head straight to meet Agent Plato, the captain decided to get a look at all that MAST held. The captain first rode the elevator to the top floor. Here, they found the Interstellar Affairs Office, home to Chief Diplomat Solomon Yassin and his deputy, Elizabeth McIntyre. Along with these two, the captain found the office to be filled with diplomatic functionaries. Across the hall stood the council chamber, the spot where the MAST council would formally meet when necessary. On the southern side of the chamber, there was a door that gave access to the roof of the MAST tower, where the captain could look out over the city and beyond. Returning to the elevator, the captain rode down to the second level. Here, they came to the most sensitive offices of the United Colonies. While none of them were willing to speak with the captain, they saw UC President Alexandra Abeo, Security Chief Jeremiah Sarkin, who commanded the entirety of UC Security, Commander Mitchell, General Xiao, the head of the UC Army, and Admiral Pasquale Logan, the chief of the UC Navy. The office of UC System Defense, Commander Kibwe Akande, and his second-in-command Lieutenant Julian Toft was empty, as they were currently aboard the UC Vigilance, hunting the Crimson Fleet. This level had a large bathroom and bunk room, indicating use during periods of emergency. The captain returned to the elevator and rose to the third level. Here they met Administrator Rooks, the head of the United Colonies Health and Human Services. Next door in defense research, Chief Engineer Apsana Kulkarni oversaw MAST's scientific programs. Within the lab, the captain also found Ricardo Bosch. Ricardo had been part of the same trio of survivors from the star station as Bobby Katz that the captain had come across in their first arrival in New Atlantis. He had been credited as the hero of the hour there, rescuing many of his fellows from the Varun Zealots. He was happy to be back in the lab, especially one as well equipped as this. He did have one complaint. In the chaos of the flight from the star station, he had forgotten his experimental data slate. While he could of course repeat these experiments, it would take an inordinate amount of time and keep him from pressing on with other research. The captain offered to recover the data slate, and Ricardo was thrilled. With that, the captain left defense research and headed next door. Here, they finally came to the offices of Aegis, the intelligence service for the United Colonies. While UC Security was the public-facing side of the UC's security operations, Aegis worked behind the scenes, hoping to prevent attacks on the United Colonies before they happened. After a brief, unguided tour of the department, the captain met Agent Plato in his office. Agent Plato is a dedicated man who strongly believes in the mission of Aegis, and that his office is that of the good guys. He discarded his birth name when he joined the agency, and according to their standards, chose a code name for himself. Now that he was older and wiser, he viewed his chosen cryptonym as a bit of youthful hubris. Coming to the matter of the mission for Sergeant Yumi, Agent Plato told the captain that Aegis used dead drops for some of their missions, and that he was concerned that one of their dead drops had been compromised. He needed the captain to collect a package from a dead drop and carry it to Sergeant Yumi. From there, Sergeant Yumi would have the package brought to Aegis. He could have simply had Sergeant Yumi send the captain himself, but the agent wanted to meet the captain in person first. The dead drop in question was under the bench at the Galbank ATM near the Spaceport station of the NAT. The captain agreed to collect it and headed for the elevator. A moment later, they were on the platform of the MAST NAT station. Before boarding the car, the captain noticed a tired-looking janitor nearby. They stopped and spoke with her. Donna Rain revealed that she and her boyfriend, a man the captain would soon meet by the name of Tony Cowell, were working hard, saving up their money so that they could move out of New Atlantis and explore the settled systems together. She was burning the candle at both ends and was wearing a bit thin. Sympathetic to her struggles, the captain offered to bring her a coffee. With thanks, she requested a cappuccino from Brew. The captain boarded the Nat and a moment later was at the Spaceport station. They would bring Miss Raynor coffee, but they had other business to attend to for the moment. After dislodging the package from the dead drop under the ATM bench, the captain made their way to the UC security office where Sergeant Yumi accepted it. With their first security job done, the captain decided to explore the spaceport, and needing some refreshment, picked out the Viewport bar as their next stop. The captain entered the bar and immediately noted that it was filled with job applicants. Specifically, these people were looking to join crews of ships such as the Frontier. There was Gideon Acker, a weapons specialist who was looking for work so that he could pay off some stressful debts, Marika Boros, who was handy with both ship's weapons and shotguns, and Simeon Bankowski, a former MAST weapons tester and marksman. The captain also saw Logan Cullen here, whom they'd met previously when delivering a letter from her brother Chris, who served with the UC Marines on Mars. The captain was about to speak with a bartender when they noticed a man in strange garb, unlike anything they'd ever seen before. The captain approached to engage him in conversation. He spoke cryptically, seemingly claiming to have lived many lives and traveled far and wide. As they began to speak of the nature of humanity, the strange man ended the conversation, laughing that they had almost started a real conversation. He said goodbye, claiming he was sure they would meet again. Confused, the captain turned back to the bar. Here they met Nissa Marcano, the proprietor. She greeted the captain in a friendly manner. When they asked her how business was, she made it clear that though business was good, she was working on something big, a beverage that would make her bar famous across the settled systems. When the captain asked to try this incredible beverage, she told them that sadly she didn't have the ingredients. The captain she had hired to ship the exotic ingredients to her turned out to be a smuggler. That smuggler was caught before they could unload their goods, and Nissa's perfectly legitimate goods had been confiscated alongside the illicit ones. She didn't have the funds to get more of the ingredients, thus she asked the captain if they would look into getting her ingredients released to her, and they agreed to help. Heading first to Sergeant Yumi as the local UC security head, the captain asked after Miss Marcano's shipment. The sergeant told the captain that if Nissa's shipment was being held up, she would simply have to wait it out. There was nothing he could do. Looking to expedite the process, the captain headed towards the storeroom where they were sure her cargo was being held. As they approached the landing pad, they came across Tommy Bitlow, an aspiring journalist with SSNN. Tommy was having trouble breaking into writing the news, and thus he asked the captain if they would be willing to spread around a few sample articles of his and return with feedback. The captain agreed and returned to their present course as they looked for Miss Marcano's ingredients. That said, the captain looked over the articles as they walked and was not terribly impressed with what they saw. Still, Tommy seemed so eager, and they thought they should get him the feedback he asked for. Upon reaching the storage area, the captain met Eamon McCarr, a dock worker. They asked Mr. McCarr if they could get into the storage area. Though he was initially hesitant, the captain persuaded him to open the way, and he told the captain to be quick. A moment later, the captain had Miss Marcano's ingredients and was on their way back to the viewport. She thanked the captain, rewarding them with credits, a glass of her prototype beverage, Supernova, and offered them the privilege of a free drink from time to time. With that, the captain left the viewport, intent on exploring the rest of the spaceport. They came next to Jimison Mercantile. Here, they first met and spoke with Gerhard Pohl, who brushed them off and told them to speak with Amoli Bava, the woman behind the counter. The captain complimented Miss Bava on the quality of her shop, and she thanked them, attributing her success to the hard work of herself and her business partner Gerhard. The captain browsed her wares and was about to leave when they saw that there was another man in the shop, an art dealer by the name of Samson Cabral. Samson, a native of Neon, claimed to be in town on business picking up a painting from a cellar. He asked the captain if they would be willing to go pick it up for them, a task for which he would remunerate them. He would have gone to pick it up himself, but claimed to be unfamiliar with the streets. The captain agreed to go in his stead, and Mr. Cabral told them that it could be found at the local office of the Trade Authority in the Well. This little additional bit of information was concerning, as the Trade Authority, though it sold many legitimate goods, was also known to act as a fence, laundering stolen goods. Artwork was not something the captain would have thought they generally carried. Regardless, this gave the captain another reason to enter the well, having previously agreed to interview people in the well for Nadia Mafaz at SSNN. After a short elevator ride, the captain found themselves at the western end of the well. It was immediately obvious that along with being the oldest and lowest part of New Atlantis, the well was also the poorest part of the city. There were graffiti tags that also showed that the locals weren't huge fans of the UC authorities. On heading down the stairs, the captain began to explore the area. On the right, they came first to UC Surplus. Within, they met the owner, Antonio Bianchi. Unlike some of the locals who decried living in the well, Antonio was happy with his lot. In his view, the well was much more real, while the people living in the city above were focused on sophistication and the fakeness that came with such a life. The captain browsed his goods before heading back out into the street outside. Just next door to the east, the captain found Kay's house, and the mother-daughter team of Kay and Teresa Mason. In speaking with him, the captain learned that Kay had opened her house to her neighbors, cooking for them and providing them with a place to relax in peace. When it came to the SSNN questions, Teresa Mason was happy to talk to the captain, both to spread the word of the issues faced by those in the well, but also to have her mother's restaurant and its mission advertised. To Teresa, the well was about the same as ever, a spot in the heart of the United Colonies that the government had forgotten about. They made repeated promises to clean the area up, but nothing ever changed. Because of this, the locals had to fix their problems the best they could, creating places like Kay's house. While business was steady as always, there were a couple of new patrons that had her concerned. She was worried they were planning some sort of criminal action from within her premises and was hoping to stop anything nefarious. The captain offered to look into the situation when they had finished their report, and she was thankful. The captain headed further east, through a graffitied tunnel, and found that they were looking upon a cascade of water falling past a gap in the concrete walls. Across from the waterfall, the captain found the medbay. The medbay had deep roots in the history of New Atlantis. It was part of the original settlement of the world, and though the city had grown and evolved around it, the medbay kept right on using the same equipment that had healed the first settlers on the once alien world. Unable to afford medical care in the upper city, the people of the well relied upon the hard work of Talia O'Shea. Born and raised in the well, and though only a nurse by trade, Miss O'Shea was responsible for much of the medical treatment in the well, and her medbay was open perpetually to keep up with demand. The captain interviewed her for SSNN, and she related that the well was, as it always was, violent and dangerous, adding that she saw fewer injuries when she served as a medic in the UC Navy. She also noted that she was having trouble treating a bunch of sick children. The captain offered to come by and help her after they'd completed their interviews, and Miss O'Shea was grateful. The captain left the medbay and headed back west before turning north and arriving at Apex Electronics, the last location Nani Mufaz had asked them to check on. Upon entering, the captain met Henrik Zeran. The captain began to ask him about his business before revealing that they were doing so for SSNN, which was lucky as he hated journalists. Before their purpose was revealed, Henrik told the captain that business was down, but that he had made ends meet for a long time, thus he wasn't worried. He also didn't take well to the suggestion that the poor of the well couldn't afford electronics. When the captain did make their purpose clear, he told them that he was still in business, that life in the well was a mess, had been for a long time, and wasn't looking up. Taking this little bit of information, the captain browsed his wares. As they were preparing to leave, they looked around the shop and saw another man sitting on a crate nearby. Interested in what this apparent layabout was doing in Mr. Zeran's shop, the captain stopped to talk. His name was Vicente Salinas, and he claimed to help Mr. Zeran in his work, along with operating a small shop of his own. The captain asked to browse his wares, but he claimed that he only worked with those he trusted. He'd be willing to trade with the captain, but only if they performed a task for him first. Intrigued, the captain agreed to pick up a package on Porama 3 just outside the Red Mile. With this, the captain left the shop and returned to the well outside. Heading north, the captain came upon the Trade Authority and noted that it was one of the few spots in the district under guard by UC security. It was also one of the oldest shops in New Atlantis, having been part of the settlement before the well became the well. Within, the captain found a tidy office with a lone woman sitting behind the only desk. Her name was Zoe Kaminsky, and she was the face of the Trade Authority in New Atlantis. The captain told her that they were there on the behalf of Samson Cabral, and she handed over the artwork. It was clear that this was a wink and nudge type operation from the way she spoke about it. With the artwork in hand, the captain returned to the elevator and rode it to the spaceport. Once back in Jemison Mercantile, they handed the artwork over to Samson Cabral and received a payment in exchange for their services. It was clear by this point that the artwork had been stolen and fenced, but the captain had been involved in the process far too late to do anything about that. With that, the captain decided to check on their free drink now and then reward from the viewport and found that Nissa Marcana was looking for help again. This time, she was looking for funding to help her mass produce her new drink, the Supernova. She could sell it at the viewport, but her plans were to take the Supernova galaxy-wide, and to do that, she would need startup capital. Knowing that the captain was part of Constellation, and that the wealthy shipbuilding philanthropist Walter Stroud was a part of Constellation as well, she asked the captain to see if Mr. Stroud would invest. The captain agreed to have a conversation with Walter Stroud and headed back out into the spaceport. Considering that Sergeant Yumi might also need some additional help, the captain returned to UC Security and found that their hunch was right. It seems there had been a scuffle at Don's Roost. One man claimed that the other stole his wedding ring, but he had departed before naming the thief. Sergeant Yumi asked the captain to speak with Royce Elgin and try to discover the truth of the matter. The captain agreed to look into the situation and headed back out into the spaceport. With a long slate of work ahead of them, the captain checked into the last spot they had yet to visit in the spaceport, Brew Coffee. Here, using one of the kiosks, they purchased the Terracino requested by Donna Rain, the sleepy janitor at the MAST station. Behind the counter there was an argument in progress between the Brew manager and a female employee that the captain recognized. It was Helena Chambers, the third member of the trio of survivors from the Star Station assaulted by Houseforeign zealots. It seems the former manager of the Star Station was now working as a barista, and wasn't taking the situation well. The captain was about to head out when they saw a man rot in grief. Guillaume de Garmo was mourning a loss, for which the captain offered their condolences, until he revealed that it was the loss of a gem that he had gambled away. Guillaume was a collector of many mundane artifacts of old Earth, and this gem was the first of his collection and the most beloved. While the reason for Guillaume's grief may have seemed comical when compared to the loss of a person, the captain avoided laughter and, in fact, offered their assistance in reclaiming the beloved gem. Guillaume handed the captain a plate from old Earth to trade his collecting rival and the new owner of his gem, Mr. George St. George. Leaving Brew, the captain headed for the Spaceport Nat Station. Soon they were back in Don's Roost. Royce revealed that the scuffle had in fact been a drunken scuffle between two men, Hugo Fournier and Octavio. The two had been in a long-term relationship that had included regular romantic meals at Don's Roost. Today, after a heated argument quickly broken up by security, Hugo ran from the restaurant, leaving Octavio to make the report of the stolen ring. Royce told the captain that he believed Hugo lived at the Athena Tower. Before heading out, the captain remembered their conversation with would-be SSNN reporter Tommy Bitlow. The captain handed Mr. Elgin a slate that served as a review of Don's Roost. After a moment, he looked at the captain in confusion. Royce was flabbergasted by the review, noting that many of the dishes Tommy claimed to review weren't sold at Don's Roost. His feedback? Grow some taste buds and a brain. Having read the review themselves, the captain thought that this was not an unreasonable assessment. With that, they headed back out to the residential district to find Hugo Fournier. A brisk walk brought them to Athena Tower and Mr. Fournier in the lobby. From a furious screed that issued forth from the lips of Hugo, the captain determined that prior to their fight, Hugo and Octavio had been in a 5-year-long relationship and had been engaged. It appeared that Octavio had been cheating on Hugo with a waiter from Don's Roost. Hugo had discovered Octavio's deception just before their last dinner and had confronted him once the waiter had served them. The captain asked him to return the engagement ring. Though he initially refused, claiming that it was a gift and was in no way Octavio's to take back, the captain convinced him to hand it over. With the ring in hand, the captain returned to the residential district Nat Station and rode it to MAST. Finding Donna Rain, the captain handed her the Terracino she had requested. She thanked them and handed the captain one of the valuable objects she had found while sweeping up over the past week. Remembering that Kelton Frush might once again need a hand, the captain headed up the ramp into the arboretum of the embassy district. Indeed, Mr. Frush was still eyeing the massive arcane tree with concern. He was happy to see the captain and did have more work for them. He was working towards some conclusions when it came to the tree, but lacked the necessary data. Data that only one of his co-workers had on hand. A co-worker who hated him. Having hit a dead end, Kelton asked the captain to check in with Emilio Hidek for him. The captain made their way to Mr. Hidek, who was also currently in the gardens performing his own work. It didn't take long for Emilio to suss out what the captain was there for, and he initially refused to help. The captain tried to appeal to his sense of duty, but unfortunately Emilio had none. While Kelton was an ideal scientist, working hard to learn the secrets of the universe in service to humanity, Emilio was a status-seeking climber who had gotten on Kelton's bad side and had gotten some poor reviews for the poor quality of his work. He would only agree to help the captain on one condition. He had managed to find a back door into MAST's personnel systems and would help if the captain would delete his bad reviews. The captain finally managed to talk him into just handing over the data Kelton needed, and he relented. With the necessary data in hand, the captain returned to Mr. Frush. He apologized to the captain for the unsavory business of dealing with Emilio and went to work integrating the data. Realizing how close they were to the lodge and Walter Stroud, the captain headed over to the home of Constellation. Inside, they found Walter Stroud and started a conversation with the words I'm sure every wealthy person loves to hear. I have an investment opportunity I wanted to talk to you about. Understandably, Walter cringed at this, but listened to the pitch and, in the end, agreed to invest based on the captain's recommendation. He told him to go speak with his wife in Neon, telling her that he had been thinking about rereading Jules Verne. Appreciative, though a little confused, the captain thanked him and headed back out into the embassy district. Leaving the lodge, the captain headed towards the embassies for which the district got its name. As they walked, a guard told them about a problem with brownouts in the well, and they noted it for the future. Before long, the captain had arrived at the Armistice Archives, the repository for the most dangerous weapons technology humanity ever created, or at least all the research and designs of said weaponry. The captain watched the tour group finish up and went down the elevator to get a look at the area beneath. While the door to the archives themselves was sealed, the captain saw the booths for the three major factions of the settled systems, including the vacant House Varun desk. House Varun had abandoned galactic politics some years before and had left the monitoring station empty. After riding the elevator back up, the captain continued on their way. They came soon to Aphelion Realty. Having seen some of the city and found it beautiful, the captain considered getting a place in New Atlantis. Unfortunately, the ability to own a home in New Atlantis was reserved for citizens. As the captain was not yet a citizen, this was not yet possible for them. They left the Aphelion Realty building and continued on their way. The Freestar Collective Embassy rose up on their right, and the captain remembered their offer to help Representative Chisholm out of his bind. Though they weren't allowed in the embassy except on business by appointment, there was a clerk at the front desk who was ready for their report. On learning about Representative Chisholm's trouble, the clerk thanked the captain and told them they would take care of the problem. As they left the embassy, the captain found a young woman protesting out front. Evie Martinez hated the Freestar Collective and wanted their embassy closed. She blamed them for the colony war and all lives lost in the conflict, including her father. She balked when the captain told her that they thought that diplomacy was absolutely necessary to prevent another colony war. Seeing that this fight was a very personal issue for her, the captain excused himself and headed away. As the captain continued their tour of the embassy district, they came across the Sanctum Universum, the Universalist faith church of the Starfield universe. Out front, the head of this branch of the Sanctum, Keeper Aquilus, was performing a sermon on turning the other cheek for a small crowd. Once the Keeper had finished his lecture, he turned and began to head back for the Sanctum. The captain stopped him for a moment and asked him the meaning of life. He laughed and told the captain to tell him if they ever discovered it. In the meantime, he suggested the captain read the Sanctum's book, Among the Grav Jumps, as an introduction to their beliefs. The captain then spoke briefly with the remnants of the Keeper's audience. While most didn't have much to say, the captain was happy to hand off another slate for Tommy Bitlow to Catherine Alvarez. Like Royce Elgin, she didn't think much of Tommy's work, calling it an offensive, poorly researched, and just blatantly incorrect hit piece. Her direct feedback: do some research or don't bother writing anything at all. With the feedback for Tommy, the captain turned to the last of the audience, Marcus Lestari. Marcus was friendly and encouraged the captain to join the Sanctum. He told the captain that a few folks had come by recently and not returned. He asked the captain to speak with him and invite them back. The captain agreed to seek out these visitors. As it so happened, they had already met two of the names on Marcus's list and was aware of the third. The first was Evie Martinez, the protester outside the Freestar Embassy. The captain spoke with her again and found her to be quite interested in the beliefs of the Sanctum, but also feared learning that they were false. Partially, this was a fear that she would never experience an afterlife in which she would meet her father again. Her fear of scratching at that belief system led her to avoid the Sanctum. When pressed on it, she angrily rejected the invitation. For a second time, the captain left Evie behind and headed towards the commercial district. Before they left the embassy district, the captain passed by the House Varun embassy. The enigmatic third faction of the settled systems, House Varun had opened this embassy sometime after they had lost an attempted war of extermination on the rest of humanity known as the Serpent's Crusade. Since that time, they had abandoned the embassy and retreated from galactic politics. The captain had heard that House Varun's ambassador, Khazar Balmor, was still within, but hadn't been seen in public for years. Leaving the embassy district behind, the captain came to the center point of finance in the settled systems, the headquarters of Galbank. Alright, that'll do for part 2. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in part 3.